Colonel, appreciate everything.
What an honor it is to have you here in Nashville. I've been a state trooper for 39 years. I love law enforcement. I love every one of you out there. Our organization supports the FOP. We have local lodges that are made up solely of state troopers across the state. We host meetings and functions in our facilities. I have been a president of a local FOP lodge and a treasurer. So the FOP is ingrained in the blood of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. And on behalf of the Tennessee Highway Patrol, we want to welcome you to Nashville. We're proud that you're here, and we will do everything in our power to make your stay a good one. Thank you for coming.
And the last local dignitary or state is Sheriff Darren Hall, who's a member of Lodge 5. And Sheriff, appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to thank the local folks who put this together, Mr. Crumbie, Mr. Smallwood, and a lot of folks here in Nashville from Andrew Jackson Lodge. I am a member of that lodge. I'm also a lifelong resident of Nashville, Tennessee. I couldn't be more proud of the city I live in, but very proud to have you here. Law enforcement, as we all know, needs attention. It needs positive attention, and you're representing exactly what that is. And I hope our city can do what it can to and have you enjoy yourself over the next few days. Several years ago, we hosted the National Sheriff's Association here. It's a lot of work. I hope you behave better than all those sheriffs. I think you will. Because we want you to have fun, enjoy yourself, and thanks for coming to Nashville. Appreciate it.
Thank you to our dignitaries from Nashville. We very much appreciate the welcome, and we'll try to leave it as nice as we found it. Thank you. It's now an honor for me, because of the work that we've done in the last few years in Washington, to introduce a very strong supporter and longtime friend of the FOP. He took a special effort to be here today, but I want to take a minute and recognize him and let you hear from him. We have Chris Cox, the Executive Director of the National Rifle Association, who is also a sponsor of this conference. And Chris was key in the passing of H.R. 218. We worked diligently with him and their legislative branch to pass 218. And when the FOP and the NRA want a piece of legislation passed, we're most likely going to get it. So I'd like to welcome Chris to the stage. Please thank him for his work in 218.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I have to tell you, I haven't felt this safe since the NRA convention, so thank you for being here. I also want to thank, on behalf of those 5 million law-abiding Americans, I want to thank Chuck Canterbury for his leadership, Jim Pascoe for his friendship, and I'd like to thank the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, for finally putting our government back on the side of cops. Thank you, sir. Chuck mentioned our work together, but the truth is, even though the national news media won't cover it, the National Rifle Association and law enforcement has a long and proud history. Within those 5 million members, there are hundreds of thousands of current and retired law enforcement officers. So I want to thank all of you who wake up in the morning, put a gun on your hip, kiss your families goodbye, and go out to keep the rest of us safe. That and the Second Amendment goes hand in hand, so thank you for what you do. I also just want to share one story that really kind of represents NRA and law enforcement in one. On September 11, 2001, NYPD officer Walt Weaver woke up when the planes hit. He was off duty, but just like any one of you would have done, he headed straight for the towers. He went in, was trying to do his best to help people out. Despite repeated requests for him to leave, he refused to leave. At the end of the day, all they found of Officer Weaver was his burned out revolver, the frame of his burned out revolver. His family called the National Rifle Association and said, guys, let me tell you something. Walt loved being a cop more than anything. But you know what else he loved? He loved the National Rifle Association of America. This is all we have left, but we want you to have this gun as a reminder of what freedom's about, a reminder of what sacrifice is about, and a reminder of what cops do every day. I have to tell you, that gun is on display at the National Firearms Museum. It will stay on display with that story. I hope any of you who come to Washington, D.C. in the area will come out and visit your National Rifle Association. We support you. We know you support freedom. And I just want to thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to be here. Thank you very much.
Brothers and sisters, honored guests, it is now my high honor and pleasure to introduce our nation's top cop, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. We are grateful that he's here with us this morning, but we're even more grateful to have him as our leader and advocate at the Department of Justice. He's been a true partner to law enforcement from his days as a U.S. Attorney, as Attorney General for the great state of Alabama, and throughout his tenure in the United States Senate. Attorney General Sessions has demonstrated commitment not just to the so-called law and order issues, but also on an issue near and dear to our heart, officer safety. At a time when law enforcement officers were being hunted and targeted for violence, many of them were asking, who has my back? Well, I can tell you who has your back now, Attorney General Jeff Sessions. In fact, on more than one occasion, he's been among the few standing up for law enforcement, especially when it came to issues such as asset forfeiture. I testified at that hearing, and I thought we both were going to need Kevlar. He's worked diligently to reinvigorate the federal task forces. He's issued executive orders to U.S. attorneys telling them to prosecute the highest crime, the most serious crime, instead of plea bargaining down. He's revitalized the Department of Justice. We've got a lot of friends in DOJ, and I can tell you they're happy at the leadership at the Department of Justice. He's served his country tirelessly and faithfully for almost his entire adult life. He is, above else, a man who serves the law and reveres justice. He has proven to be an exemplary U.S. Attorney General with whom we have a productive and dynamic partnership. General, you have some friends in the room. Where are you? Alabama. They told me to tell you that they're with you and they thank you for all the work you did for them when you were Attorney General in Alabama and in the Senate. Brothers and sisters, please help me in welcoming the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions.
Thank you all. It is wonderful to be with you, and thank you, Chuck, for that wonderful introduction and for your support and friendship and the support and friendship of FOP. I have felt it. I know it's there. I feel an obligation to honor the confidence you've placed in me, and we're going to work every day to see that we do and to advance the interests and the rights and duties of the great men and women in blue. You know, you got some 6,000 people here. I heard it was going to be a big group, but fabulous group, and it's an honor for me to be with you. 330,000 members, the largest worldwide group dedicated to law enforcement, so I want to thank you for that. Chris Cox, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here, and all the law officers that we've heard from this morning. And I particularly appreciate the mayor's personal comments to us today. So on behalf of President Trump and the Department of Justice, I'm honored to be with you. Let's hear it. A law and order president indeed. The Fraternal Order of Police serves a critical purpose to support those who protect us, and I want to thank you again for what you've meant to our country and to the Department of Justice and to me and the President. And today, as many of your members and our law enforcement partners continue to work tirelessly in Houston to rescue those affected by the catastrophic flood waters in Texas, I want to ask all of us to lift them up in our prayers. Those officers are going out every day. Often their own homes are also damaged. They don't know where the rising waters will be next, but they're out there working to help others. As the waters continues to rise, we worry about them and the entire city of Houston. This is the work that police and law enforcement officers do day in, day out. No matter where the danger comes from, they are there to serve and protect. I appreciate you. I value you. America appreciates you. America values you. I know firsthand the important work that each of you do. I was a federal prosecutor for 14 years and was blessed to work every day with federal but state and local law enforcement officers, many of them members of the FOP, to fight crime, to defend the lives and liberties of the American people. Gangsters and cartel members, fraudsters, murderers, drug dealers. Those are the people that threaten our peace and dignity in this country, and we must be effective against them, and you are the front lines in that effort. I know each of you has had a positive impact in your communities, but your work is hard, and in many places it's getting harder and more dangerous. That's because we're facing a multi-front battle, an increase in violent crime, a rise in vicious gangs, an opioid epidemic that the mayor calls our attention to, threats from terrorism, combined with a culture in which family and discipline seem to be eroding further, and there's a disturbing disrespect for the rule of law. We must teach our children better. We must teach them respect and discipline, the value of hard work, following the rules. I know you share that vision, and we in America have got to work toward it. After decreasing for nearly 20 years because of hard but necessary police work that our country started really back in the 80s when I became a federal prosecutor for President Ronald Reagan, violent crime is coming back, significantly so. The murder rate surged nearly 11% nationwide in 2015, the largest increase since 1968. Per capita homicide rates are up in 27 of our 35 largest cities, some dramatically up. My best judgment is, as I've said for a number of years, my best judgment is that something is happening out there that's troubling, that this is not just a blip, and we have got to rededicate ourselves to reversing this trend before it gets out of control as it was in the 1960s and 70s. Drugs are killing more Americans than ever. Preliminary data shows that nearly 60,000 people died from drug overdoses in 2016. And that's up from 50,000 in 2015. Not only is that the highest drug-related death toll in our history, but it is also the fastest increase in drug deaths we've ever seen. We've seen nothing like this before. For Americans under the age of 50, drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death. Fabulous Nashville, this wonderful city, typical American great city, isn't immune to these problems either. This city saw a 76% increase in murders between 2014 and 2015, and a 120% increase in fatal opioid overdoses in 2016. So these numbers are shocking. We're seeing them all over the country, but they aren't just numbers. They represent moms and dads, brothers and sisters, neighbors and friends and classmates. I know appreciate the mayor, and I know that many of you in this room have also felt these losses firsthand. I was in New Hampshire a few months ago at a Drug Enforcement Administration conference with the governor, with some 8,000 high school seniors, and 50 mothers stood before that crowd. All 50 told them about the loss of one of their children as a result of opioid overdoses. Law enforcement officers like you face these challenges every day, and the pain of this loss. You are the thin blue line that stands between law-abiding people and disorder, between sanity and lawlessness. You protect our families, our communities, and secure our countries against drug and violence. The vast majority of our country appreciates overwhelmingly what you do. In fact, I noticed just a few weeks ago, Gallup released their poll, which showed that overall confidence in police had risen back to high levels this year. That's well above the levels of approval Congress gets. You can be sure of that. Maybe about 5 times their numbers, but some would undermine this support. It's sad but true. By portraying law enforcement as an enemy, instead of recognizing that the Justice Department and state and local and federal law officers and prosecutors vigorously prosecute any law officer in cases where they violate the rights of our citizens, they choose to slander all the honorable men and women in law enforcement who serve every day with professionalism, integrity, selflessness. And this slander has got to stop. Their divisive rhetoric treats police officers like they are the problem, instead of the crucial allies that you all are, instead of the solution that you are. So it can come as no surprise when we see rising levels of violence against law enforcement. Last year, 66 law enforcement officers made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty, a 61% increase since 2015. And FBI data shows that about a third of those deaths were the result of premeditated and unprovoked attacks. This deadly trend seems to be getting worse. Preliminary data shows that officer deaths for the first 6 months of 2017 are up 18%. We saw just this type of tragic violence a little week ago when 6 officers were shot in a single night. 2 of them, Sergeant Sam Howard and Officer Matthew Baxter of Kissimmee, Florida, lost their lives. And just last month, Officer Miotis Familia, a 12-year veteran of the New York Police Department and a mother of 3, was gunned down in cold blood by an assassin while sitting in her police van. She was just doing her job, and yet she was unjustly targeted in a vicious act and a cowardly act. We pray for our lost brothers and sisters. We do all we can to support the grieving families and friends, and we vow to do all in our power to further our resolve to protect, respect, and preserve and honor law enforcement. Those of us in leadership roles must say and do nothing that in any way increases the risk you and your colleagues face when they walk the streets of America today. At Officer Familia's funeral, NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill said it well, quote, cops are regular people who believe in the possibility of making a safer world. That's why we run toward danger when others run away. More and more, Americans celebrate the work that you do and the sacrifices you make. It's essential, a top priority of mine, to restore respect for our law officers at the highest level, as it should be. And that's why I'm really here today. On behalf of President Trump and the entire Department of Justice, thank you. Thank you for what you do. The President is proud to stand with you. He is exceptionally proud to have run as the law and order President. And I'm proud to stand with you. And the Department of Justice is proud to stand with you. We have your back. We black the blue. This president stands with you, not just rhetorically, but in thought, word, and deed. President Trump sent the Department of Justice 3 executive orders just after I was sworn in. He sent us the Back the Blue executive order, directing us to support our law enforcement officers at all levels of government. The second order made it our objective, pretty simple objective, reduce crime in America, not preside over its increase. And third, the third order requires us to dismantle transnational criminal organizations. And we're taking action toward that end. Several months ago, we changed the charging policy for our federal prosecutors, trusting them once again and directing them to return to charging the most serious, readily provable offense. Why would they not? In July, we reinstituted something Chuck and his team cared a lot about. I think a lot of you cared about. We reinstituted our equitable sharing program, ensuring that criminals will not be permitted to profit from their crimes. As President Trump knows well, civil asset forfeiture is a key tool that helps law enforcement defund organized crime, take back ill-gotten gains, and prevent new crimes from being committed, and it weakens the criminal gangs and cartels. Civil asset forfeiture takes the material support of the criminals and makes it the material support of law enforcement. It, in departments across this country, funds that were once used to take lives are now being used to save lives. It is a top priority of the Department of Justice. You can be sure of that. I have made that clear. In March, I issued a directive on guns and violent crime. Since then, we've seen a 23% increase in the number of criminals charged with unlawful possessions of firearms. Now, that's something that would not be done without the partnership of state and local law enforcement and those fabulous task forces that we value so much. Also, the department has convicted more than 1,200 members of gangs, cartels, and their subsidiaries since the beginning of this year. While I'm proud of the work that the Department of Justice has done, we have not done it alone. And we can never hope to do it alone. 85% of law enforcement officers are state, local, or tribal. This is your work. You are on the front lines. These are your well-earned successes. We are partners in the effort to reduce crime in America. helping law enforcement do their jobs, helping the police get better, and celebrating the noble, honorable, essential, and challenging work of our law enforcement communities will always be a priority of President Trump. He has made that clear, and it will be a priority of this Department of Justice. We will always seek to affirm the critical role of police officers in our society, and we will not participate in anything that would give comfort to radicals who promote agendas that preach hostility rather than respect for police. So President Trump is serious about this mission. He is doing all he can to restore law and order and support our police across America. And that's why I'm here today. And one reason, to announce that President Trump this day is issuing an executive order that will make it easier to protect yourselves and your communities. And it's a top priority of Chuck and your leaders. He is rescinding restrictions from the prior administration that limited your agency's ability to get equipment through federal programs, including life-saving gear. Thank you. Life-saving gear to make your lives safer, like Kevlar vests and helmets, first responder and rescue equipment like they're using in Texas right now. Some of these programs, like our popular Department of Defense 1033 program that Congress passed into law more than 25 years ago, have provided and recycled more than $5.4 billion in used gear and equipment that taxpayers had already purchased and made it available to your agencies to repurpose it in the fight against terrorism, crime, and for disaster relief. Equipment like helicopters, armed vehicles are vitally important to emergency and disaster response efforts. One sheriff told me earlier this year about how, due to prior administration restrictions, the federal government made his department return an armored vehicle that can change the dynamics in an active shooter situation. These are the types of helmets and gear that stopped a bullet and saved the life of an officer during the Orlando nightclub shooting. This is the type of equipment officers needed when they pursued and ultimately killed terrorists in San Bernardino. Studies have shown that this equipment reduces crime rates, reduces the number of assaults against police officers, and actually reduces the number of complaints against police officers. These restrictions that had been opposed went too far. We will not put superficial concerns above public safety. We will do our best to get you what you need. All you need to do is turn on a TV right now to see what for Houstonians, that for them, isn't just about appearances. It's about getting the job done, getting everyone to safety, protecting the community. Good equipment saves lives. The executive order that the President will sign today will ensure that you can get the life-saving gear you need to do your job and send a strong message that we will not allow criminal activity, violence, and lawlessness to become a new normal. And we will save taxpayer money in the process. There's not a dollar to waste, and we're not going to waste a dollar. We're not going to allow equipment no longer needed to be sitting idle when you could be using it. Roughly stated, Chuck, the FOP's motto means law is a safeguard of freedom. I would go one step further by saying that the rule of law is the safeguard of freedom. The law secures our God-given rights, and you, the officers who enforce it, ensure all Americans enjoy these rights. The Department of Justice and the Trump administration are proud to stand with you as you continue to do your critical and honorable work. We have your back. You have our thanks. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to hear.
Very nice to have somebody in that office that's going to support us.